Right, so we're going to go over in this video all of the comparative differences between Premiere and Final Cut, just where all the simple things which have moved place are and all the new functions, how everything works. If you look in the links below this video, there's a bunch of time codes to specific points in the video so that you can skip. If you just want to learn something about one specific thing, you can skip to that point in the video. So we're going to get right started with... One big change is that we don't need the video drive plugged in to be able to start Premiere up like we did in Final Cut. What we do need to do is make sure that the project is saving onto the video drive by hitting the Browse button next to Location. Unlike in Final Cut, where each window was separate and we could close down separate windows at will and minimize them, Premiere works with tabs instead. So you can reposition windows by dragging the tab into another window. Dropping it in the middle or at the very top makes it a new tab within that window. Or you can drop it into one of these four spaces to make it its own separate new window. And as always, you can resize all these windows to preference. The bin is now here in the bottom left as opposed to Final Cut where it was in the top left, but it still holds all of your clips just like before, and you still import by going to File, Import, and selecting your clips. Quite a nice new feature is that if you hover the cursor key over a clip, that you can scrub through it to see what's inside the clip without ever opening it up. Previewing clips normally still works exactly the same way. You double click the clip and it opens in the preview window. As does the input and output system. Press I to put an in point, press O to put an out point. What is new with the preview window is that you can drag from the video only and audio only icons if you want to just put the video or the audio from a clip into your timeline. These buttons also serve as shortcuts if you want to switch between the audio waveform and back to video again. Now, unlike Final Cut, where timeline was already created for you when you created a new project, Premiere has a blank space until a clip is dragged into the timeline. It then sets the timeline to whatever the sequence settings should be for that footage. All the same options for muting the sound and the visibility of tracks are still present, as are the options to toggle snapping, and the linked selection, which will allow you to select either the video or the audio separately. Incidentally, when the timeline is selected, pressing plus and minus will zoom you in and out. Previously in Final Cut, you had to toggle a button to be able to edit the audio levels. The new way of doing this in Premiere is to simply expand a track by dragging it out, which will reveal the sound level line. Adding in keyframe markers to allow students to fade in and out at will can still be done by using the pen tool and clicking on this line, much like you could in Final Cut. Nothing's really changed about the output window. It still functions mainly the same as in Final Cut, But if you do want to see the safe margins, which are not present, you can click on the Options button and select Safe Margins. You can also change the displayed size of the video using this drop-down menu at the bottom left. We still have an effects window which we can use to drag effects onto clips, just like in Final Cut. And we still have an effects control window when we double click on a clip to be able to adjust the levels of those effects that we just put on. In Effect Controls, we can also access all the controls for rotating and resizing clips by clicking on the drop-down menu next to Motion. Moving clips around with the wireframe is probably one of the biggest things which is different now. There's no more image plus wireframe option. Instead, to activate the wireframe, we double click on a clip on the timeline, move to Effect Controls, and click the Activate Wireframe button. This now reveals the handles for you to resize, reposition, and rotate the clip. One thing to note is that once you deselect the clip, those handles will disappear and you'll need to activate them again with the Activate Wireframe button. Cropping a clip is no longer in Effect Controls as it was in Final Cut. It now needs to be added as a separate effect by going to Video Effects, Transform, Crop, and dragging it onto a clip. When the crop effect is added, you can then crop the clip by selecting the Activate Wireframe button in Effect Controls next to Crop. Note that you actually have a crop box in Premiere which you can move around, unlike in Final Cut where it just chopped off parts of the clip. Instead of the title button, which was in Final Cut, adding titles now works by going to Title, New Title, Default Still. This opens up the title creator, which works exactly the same as in Final Cut. The only difference is that now, when you're finished creating your title, you close the title creator and your title is placed in the bin as a new clip, which you can then drag onto the timeline. If you want to edit any of these titles at a later point, you can just double click them and it reopens the title creator. All of the tools in the toolbar should be pretty familiar, with the exception of the rate stretch tool, which is a new tool which allows you to change the speed of clips in the timeline by trimming them. You can still alter the speed of the clips in the traditional manner by right-clicking and selecting Speed/Duration, either in the timeline or in the preview window. Exporting works much the same way as before: File, Export, Media. Make sure the format is set to H.264 and set the save location by clicking on the blue text next to output name. In general, blue text in Adobe software always means you can click on this to edit something. As a side note, these export settings remove the requirement to handbrake most videos, as it reduces the file size to lower than 100 megabytes. Sometimes students will accidentally move windows about or even close windows accidentally. You can fix this by navigating to Window, Workspaces, Reset to Saved Layout. Or alternatively, the shortcut Alt-Shift-0. When clips go offline, they show up with this question mark symbol in the bin, and as a red clip in the timeline. We can reconnect them just like in Final Cut by right-clicking and going to Link Media, which replaces the Reconnect Media option in Final Cut. Simply hit Locate and find the clip which Premiere asks for at the top. We can also do the exact same process in the bin to reconnect multiple clips. Premiere no longer requires rendering to play back clips with effects on like it did in Final Cut. You'll most often get this yellow bar which indicates that it's partially rendered and can still watch your clips. There are some occasions, especially when working with After Effects links, where you'll get the red bar indicating unrendered footage and your playback will be slow and jerky as a result. To fix this, you can render by simply selecting the timeline and pressing Enter. Creating slugs and colour mats is now all contained in a single menu, File, New, Black Video, which creates a 5-second slug in your bin, which you can then drag into the timeline. While File, New, Colour Mat creates a new blank clip of the colour of your choice. A common problem when exporting is that sometimes only part of the timeline or a single clip will get exported and not the entire sequence. That's down to one of either two things. Either a clip has been accidentally left selected in the bin, which means that Premiere will export only that clip. This is easily fixed by just giving the timeline a click in an empty space to make sure it's selected without any other clip. Another way that this problem can occur is when input and output markers have been accidentally placed in the timeline. These can be removed by right-clicking and selecting Clear In and Out.